In a previous edition of Wild About Wheels, we took you to the spectacular Greenwich Concours Elegance on the Connecticut seacoast at Roger Sherman Baldwin Park, an event spanning 2 full days and featuring both rare and enormously valuable sports and GT cars and a fabulous turnout of American and European classics.
Good morning. Good to see you. Welcome today to the Greenwich Concours Elegance Festival.
With the dizzying number of cars arriving on both days, we felt we needed another opportunity to showcase even more of the sensational cars on the display field. Organizer Bruce Wennerstrom made our job a bit easier by virtue of how the show field was arranged.
The field is laid out in 15 circles of 70 to 80 feet in diameter. They're roped off. The cars are arranged like the spokes of a wheel, and we have from 14 to 16 cars in a circle. And the circles, the cars are grouped by year or by type. So we'll have a circle of American classic cars, say from 1928 to 1942. We'll have another circle of American production cars, which will be the larger production Chevrolets, Buicks, Lincolns, so forth, running also comparable time period.
So let's take a late spring stroll across this glimmering fantasy land of high-ticket rides and hear from the owners themselves. Joe DeCampi owns this elegant 1921 Rolls Royce.
This is one of the Springfield Rolls Royces, made in Springfield, Massachusetts, where they built the Rolls Royce in this country from 1921 to 31. This one's called an Ascot Tourer, which was one of the prettier body styles they had out of Springfield. Body's built by Brewster in New York. It gets a couple of thousand miles a year. It's a hobby car. It's not a car that that I would ever use for work or on a have-to journey. It's a car you take because you want to drive it.
This car is a 1967 Ford Mark IV. It was built by the Ford Motor Company to race at Le Mans. There were 4 of them that were built, and this particular example finished 4th overall, driven by Bruce Mclaren and Mark Donohue. In that race, no car had ever gone more than 200 miles an hour at Le Mans, and the fastest Ferraris, which were P4 Ferraris, were clocked in the testing week at about 199 miles an hour. This car, Bruce McLaren, for the first time ever broke the 200-mile barrier, and he actually went 223 miles an hour and set a track record that's really never been broken, because after that race, to slow the cars up on the Mulsanne Straight, they put a chicane, and this car holds the Le Mans lap record even to this day.
This particular car is a 1932 Deusenberg. It's a Murphy Roadster. It's built on a short wheelbase, and it's actually an American car, maybe the greatest American car of them all. It was built right in the good old USA in Auburn, Indiana, and it has quite a history to it. Well, this particular car was delivered in 1932 to Philadelphia Deusenberg Motors in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's lived its entire life in the Northeast area. I think the furthest south it went at one point was down to Maryland, down to Baltimore, Maryland. And one interesting note that I have on the history of the car is that around 1942, one of the previous owners of this car, their wife drove this as their everyday driver.
This is a 48 Chrysler Town & Country convertible. It was basically a New Yorker series car, 8-cylinder, custom built outside of the regular Chrysler factory by an outside firm. They built about 5,000 of these over 3 years. It was their highest priced car in 1948. It doesn't really compare to any other car because it's a wood car. They also made a New Yorker convertible, which was an all-steel car, but this car, being wooden, was sort of a special car that was outside of their lineup. They started with a Town & Country sedan, then they went to the convertibles, and then they dropped them after 1949. They were too expensive and too hard to maintain, but extremely popular as a collector car today.
And so is this car, since it was once part of the White House motor pool during the administration of William Howard Taft.
This is a 1909 36 horsepower Pierce Arrow. It's a small six, it's about 400 cubic inches, triple ignition, 4-speed gearbox. Of the Pierces produced that year, there was 311 of this model, about 600 of the larger 48s, and about 50 of the 66s. This car, we know the history back to 46, and we believe back to the day it was built, because we think it was the first car delivered to the White House on March 3, along with 3 other cars, a Pierce Arrow 48, a white steam car, and a Baker Electric.
We'd love to show you even more of the outstanding vintage classics that rolled onto the Greenwich field for the Concours, but there were over 150, so you'll just have to take our word for it that this was a show to behold.
But here is best of show, a 1938 Delage D8 120, Sam Mann, Englewood, New Jersey.
And as the class winners glided to the award stand to receive their trophies, you can believe that just about everybody was already planning a trip to Connecticut next year to enjoy this lavish Concours on the harbor.